So this is your video for setting up Proxmox on a regular old any machine on the hardware level, and installing Portainer afterwards. So we're gonna just start from the beginning. This may be a lengthy video, just so you're aware. I'll try to cut things out as we're just waiting for stuff to install, but you may have to pause, forward, rewind, just to make sure you did it right. But so the first step is head over to proxmox.com. You're going to want to download the virtual environment. They do have other services, backups and mail and all that, but we just want the virtual environment. So proxmox.com, head to downloads, and we're going to download this ISO installer. So go ahead and click download. It's not too large of a file, but depending on your internet, that might take a while. I already have it downloaded, so if you need to pause. But moving on, we're gonna on a Mac computer, you can use a program that's called Etcher, Balena Etcher. You can get this from etcher.io, and it is a free tool that you can use on Mac computers to make bootable drives off of ISO images, right? On a Windows computer, I have it open here. You can use a tool that's called Rufus, and also another tool that's called Yumi. These tools both make bootable USB drives. Rufus is for a single ISO image, and Yumi can be used for multiple ISO images. So for simplicity, you may just want to use Rufus, but essentially you'll just want to download it and download the same ISO image and use the Rufus tool here to, well, I can just show you. So I'm going to download that. It's a pretty small download, so it should be pretty quick. You're going to open that up. The difference here, I can tell you the difference between the versions here is the regular one is a Windows x64, which should be pretty much any modern Windows system, unless you have a brand new Windows, which is ARM based, and this would be like a Samsung chip or a Qualcomm chip. If you don't know what you have, you may just want to get over to the Windows settings, go to System, and then go to the bottom and click About. So here it should tell you what type of processor you have. So this is a, well, I'm actually running this virtualized on a Windows computer, so I actually do have ARM. So I would download the ARM version, but you may want to just, if you're just, you may want to just double check what you have so that you're downloading the right one. For the most part, I'm pretty sure everybody has the standard Rufus x64. If you have a really old computer and you're running 32-bit for some reason, I'm not sure why you would be, but you may want to get this one, which is 32-bit. And if you don't want to install anything and you're just trying to run Rufus off of a USB or someone else's computer or something like that, that's what the P one is for. It is a portable version that doesn't install. So here is Rufus. You would just choose what USB drive you want to select here. You would choose your ISO image by going to select here, trying to find it. Let's say it's this one. And then it should pretty much fill out the rest of the options for you. You don't really have to change anything unless you know what you're changing, and then you just hit start. For Etcher, it's the same process. You click flash from file, you choose your ISO image, you select your target. Here's my USB drive, click select and just click flash. You may have to type in your admin password on both, but otherwise that should take about 5-10 minutes or so. And then that's pretty much it. You can pull out the USB drive, make sure that you properly eject it, you're not just yanking it out, and we can move on to actually installing it. Now that I have Proxmox on a USB, I'm going to be booting my computer here. So I'm doing a screen capture on an actual desktop computer, so I'm going to push the power button now, and on my keyboard I'm pressing F12, and this is a Dell PC, so yep, there we go. So I'm going to navigate over to my USB drive, and I believe I'm on legacy boot. It's set to UEFI, so why don't we try that? UEFI, and that's my USB drive. You can tell the difference if you basically process of elimination, right? So it's not Ubuntu, it's not Windows. I don't know what that MOK SB is, so it must be the UEFI verbatim. That's the brand of my USB. So press enter on that. Oh, there's an admin password on this. There we go. Okay, so I guessed correctly. So we're going to install Proxmox using the graphical installer. It just helps us out, makes it a little terminal, which wouldn't be great. But pretty much the installation is all defaults. We're not really going to do anything exotic because the whole point of this is to use this as a hypervisor and install it directly onto the system. That's incredibly tiny. That's not what it's supposed to look like, but if you see down here in the corner, it says I agree. So let's just click that. I believe it's because it's 4K. That's why it's so tiny. This is the hard disk selection at the bottom. So I do want to select the internal drive. Or actually, I have a USB that I plugged in, which I can't see. I think it's this one. This is NVMe. So it must be this one. And we can go to next. Oh, you have to enter a country. So, US. United States. Okay, there we go. United States. And next. We do have to put in a master password here, so I'm just going to type something that I'll remember. And the email address, hopefully it accepts that default. Nope, it does not. So you don't necessarily have to put a real email address, but if you are deploying this for yourself, feel free to use your actual email. It's just for the sake of inventory for them, I suppose. Here is the IP address. You may want to set this to something static if you plan on deploying this for real, but otherwise this should be fine. A fully qualified domain name, so I'm just going to call this prox.local. Whoops, that's good enough. Prox.local. And automatically reboot, yep, and install. So this will take a couple minutes. I'll probably just edit the video and cut this part, but hopefully everything goes smoothly. If you're installing directly onto hardware, you should be okay. I am installing this on a Dell Optiplex, which I'll put up on the screen. And I'm using an external USB drive as my boot drive, basically. That way I have my internal storage free to play with, and that will be sort of like the virtual machine storage, the actual internal storage. And then I'm also just capturing this on a capture device, so I don't have a monitor attached or anything. But yeah, that's it. So once the installation's finished, I'll come back. All right, so it looks like the installation just finished and it's rebooting. So I'm just gonna hit F12 again, and I want to get back to the boot menu. Oh, I don't think that worked. Yep, so we want to boot into Proxmox. And if everything went well, you should just get basically a terminal screen and that it shows you the IP address. If you did not specify an IP address, you can do so from here. It is a bit difficult to change it if you did not specify it during the installation. So make sure that you're putting an IP address that's actually something that you can get to, some address that you know will work. But this is what you should get. We'll continue this video with the actual web login using this address here that you see. Again, yours will be different, custom to your network. So make sure that you put something that actually works. So now I've connected my computer to the network. I have it ready to go. So I've gone to the IP address that I set on the machine itself. And you do need to put on the URL port, which is signified with a colon and then 8006. So that's just the default port for Proxmox, the web interface, web GUI. You may get this potential security risk because it does use a certificate, and it's not, it's not an actual like independently signed certificate. But depending on the browser you're using, you basically just have to say continue, like go forward, move on, it's okay. And you should get the login page. So the default username is root, and then hopefully you remember the password that you put, and you'll have to just log in, and you should get this interface. The default interface when you first sign in. You have one node over here on the left. A node is basically just a machine. Proxmox does allow you to have multiple nodes, so you can provide like a cluster for the sake of redundancy or just more power. If you expand the node, you should see just a couple things here: your network, your local storage, and if you have secondary, this volume that you have here. Most people will have these three, so that's just the default that you see, and it's basically just your network and your storage. Now, let's say that you did not specify the right network here. I'm going to show you how to change it, and you can do this directly from the terminal if you're still like connected directly to the physical machine. The steps are exactly the same. So if you have the terminal in front of you and you accidentally put the wrong IP address, you can just reinstall Proxmox, or you can just log in. The login is the same: username, root, your password, and then you head over to well, first Nano. This is just Linux, so it's basically the same idea. Nano is a text editor in Linux, so just type the word Nano, and then it's etc. network, I think, interfaces. Yeah. So that is a file that you're going to have to edit. And you see here, if you scroll down or use your keyboard, you cannot use the mouse, but use the keyboard, you have your gateway and address here. So you'll have to specify your IP address and the gateway. Do not change anything else. Everything else should be okay. So just make sure that you put an IP address that you know is accessible in your network. Not much other guidance I can provide you there. Your network is your network. And once you change this, you just want to hit these commands down here. The caret symbol is control, the control key. So control X, asking you to save, press Y for yes, and just leave the name exactly as it is. So just press enter. And then another file you'll have to edit is nano etc. hosts, I think. Yeah. And this file contains also the IP address here. So this IP address you'll have to change, and nothing else. So make sure you change that one as well, and then the same thing, control X, Y, and enter. Once you've made those changes, you may have to reboot the machine here, which you can do just by typing the command reboot. Mine should be okay, so I'm just going to leave it as is. Okay, so next, just going over a couple things here. In your data center option at the top left, you have many options. The ones you should mainly concern yourself with are storage. So you'll have your storage here, and backup. Make sure that you enable and configure this. Proxmox, if we go to Proxmox website, they do have their own backup server, which you can just download. It is just an ISO, and you can install this as a virtual machine within your Proxmox itself. Just make sure you point the backups to some other storage, some NAS that you have or something, because you don't want to just put everything in one server, and if that server dies, well, then you lose your server and your backups, so that's not a great idea. So you can install the Proxmox backup server here as a virtual machine, a VM in Proxmox itself, but then just make sure you're storing the data somewhere else. And then another thing to point out here is the cluster here. So if you wanted to actually join multiple servers together, you can create a cluster from your primary server, your primary node, and then your other servers that you want to add. It just gives you some instructions on basically copy paste some authentication stuff, and you can just join multiple Proxmox servers into one major cluster. Next portion is if you head to the Proxmox server itself, which you should only have the one, right? The summary here gives you the available CPUs, how much memory you have, how much drive space is available directly on the machine itself, and yeah, the CPU that you're running, the version of Linux, all that good stuff. If you head to the network, you should have just the one network Linux bridge, which is the IP address that you configured, and you should not need anything else here, at least not for the sake of this introduction. You can configure more networks, but that's more of an advanced thing. And then your DNS, make sure you set that to something that actually works. This is a public DNS 1111. So you can put any public DNS there, like Google's 8888, just anything that works. And then finally we have our disks here. So if you just click the disks menu there, you should have a couple options. So I believe I installed it on this guy. Yeah. Oh, this is an internal SSD, which is fine. That's fine. I meant to install it on this one. This is my external SSD, but same thing, internal, external. I didn't realize I had more than one. And then this is the USB that I forgot to unplug. So this is my primary NVMe storage. So this is what I'm going to use for the sake of provisioning virtual machines and installing operating systems and so on. So I'm going to actually wipe this one. Make sure that you know which one you're wiping, right? If you look here under SDA, and yours are not going to be the same. Maybe they'll be the same, maybe not. But this one has the BIOS boot, the EFI, and the LVM. So this means that this is the one that has Proxmox installed. You can check over here, right? The LVM. And if you just click LVM as well, you'll see that it is installed on dev SDA and then 3. So it's the SDA third partition. So that is dev SDA third partition. So this is the disk that has Proxmox installed. Don't delete that one. So any other disk that you have, and you will need, I mean, you don't need more than one, but if you just have the one, then just keep in mind how much storage you have available. But I have more than one, so I'm going to install it on a second one. I'm just going to hit wipe disk on that one. Yes. And I'm going to initialize this with GPT. And then I am going to create a volume group on NVMe 1. I'll call this, I'll just call this OS and create. And so now I have, if you look over here on the left, I have a new storage space available to me that's called OS. That's the one I just made. And that is on my secondary or primary, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's on my other disk. That's the NVMe storage. So I can, when I start installing operating systems, I can just install them on this. So the next thing I want to do is download Portainer. So Portainer. So, well, actually, let me just show you what this is, but get started with Portainer. And where documentation, there we go. So we're going to use the Portainer Community Edition. This is free, it's open source, and anybody can install this. Install Portainer CE, setting up, there we go. Docker standalone. We're going to do the standalone, this swarm and these other ones, or if you're deploying to a multiple servers, multiple clusters, but we're just going to do the one for now, keep it simple. And we're going to install it on Linux. So what do we need? So to get started, you will need the latest version of Docker, and we recommend following the official instructions of Docker. You need sudo access on the machine and just some ports that are going to be exposed, so that's fine. Really all we need is some version of Docker installed, and let's look at that, the official Docker instructions. So we're going to install this Docker engine, and you can see all the different operating systems that they support. So you can just install any of these operating systems and you should be fine as long as you follow their instructions here. So for example, let's say I wanted to choose Debian. So install Docker engine on Debian. And actually, let's keep it simple. That might be, we're trying to keep this as easy as possible. So let's do it on Ubuntu. So these are the Ubuntu versions that are supported. And let's just head over to ubuntu.com. And we're going to download Ubuntu. We want not the desktop version, but we want to download the server over here on the left. Get Ubuntu server. We're going to download the latest one, 24.4.2. Just make sure that starts downloading. There we go. And that makes sure that that is supported. So 24.4, yeah, just the LTS branch, which means long-term service. So this is part of the LTS branch, so we're fine. And Yeah. So once we have that, this is going to be a fresh install, so we're not going to worry about uninstalling any old versions. And we're actually just going to follow the basic install here for Docker. And yep. All right, so my download just finished. I'm going to, in order to actually install something in Proxmox, you need to put the ISO somewhere that Proxmox can access it. So if you look at your storage options here, the local one has about 40 gigs. Yours will be different, of course. The LVM has about 57, and my OS one has 256. So I'm gonna store my ISOs in local. And if you look here on the right, once you click local, you have a couple options. So ISO image is one of them. You can either choose download from a URL, which means you input the URL directly and it has to be a direct download, or you can download it like I did and choose upload here, go to select file, and then wherever you put it and upload your file here. Yeah, and just hit upload. This should be fairly quick depending on your network speed, you know, if you're wired, if you're wireless, and how big the file is. But this is going to put the ISO into one of the storages that's within Proxmox, and then you can actually access it when you are creating a new virtual machine. All right, so the upload finished. This pop-up came up, and all it's doing is it puts the file into a temp folder first to make sure that there's enough space, and then it copies that file using this copy command from the temp folder to its actual directory. And so once that's done, you'll see this task OK. As long as you see that, you're good to go. So you can close this, and you'll see that you have your file that you just uploaded in this ISO images directory in whatever storage you picked, right? So the next thing is we're actually going to go up here to the top, and we're going to choose create VM. And you can just leave these at the default. This is our default node that we have. The ID is just a number. You can change this number if you want to, and just give it a name. I'm going to call this Portainer because that's what it is. I'm going to go to next. The operating system here, we're going to choose our storage, the one that you chose to put your ISO in. And then if you click that ISO image, now you should see your file that you uploaded. And then we're just going to leave Linux and the kernel as the default, which should be the latest, and go to next. The system here, I'm going to change this from machine to from i440, which is an older version, to Q35, which is more modern. The BIOS here, I'm also going to choose UEFI, more modern, right? More security. I'm going to choose to store the EFI, which is like a small image, a small file that's meant for verifying this operating system, in the same storage as my operating system. I'm also going to add this QEMU agent, which is like a file or a application that allows the operating system to sort of communicate with Proxmox. And then TPM here, I'm also going to choose OS to store the TPM key in the operating system storage also. The controller here, you can leave that as is, and yeah, go to next. The storage here, I'm going to give it a little more, like 80. It depends on what you have, of course. If you don't have that much space, just whatever you have. I'm also going to check this discard here, which means that it will, when you delete files, it will actually delete them. The bus device here, you may want to change this to, actually SCSI's fine, just leave that as is. Cache, you can just put no cache, that's fine. And then go to next. CPU here, of course, you'll want to stick with what you got. I only have 8 cores on this machine. It's a pretty like old crappy Dell, so I'm just gonna leave it at 4 cores, half the cores I have available. Obviously, if you have more, feel free to put more. The type here, so these, there's a lot of different types. You can emulate different types of CPUs. Of course, it's only as good as your actual physical CPU. So because we only have one node, and for the sake of simplicity and to just make it perform better, we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and choose host. That means that it's just going to directly get the cores from the host. It's not going to emulate anything, and this will perform better. It's just as if it's directly accessing the physical hardware. And then we're going to go to next. Memory here, I think I had like 16 gigs available, so I'm just going to put 4096, 4 gigs of memory. That should be fine. And then go to next. The network device, you can just leave that all as the defaults. It should get its own IP address. and next, and confirm, and we're going to put start after created and finish. And so if we click our new VM here on the left and we head over to the console, you should see, whoops, that you now have this install Ubuntu, right? So now it's the same process as before, where you can just go through the installation process of installing Ubuntu, and I'll just get it started here. Hopefully you've done this before. All right, so I'm obviously pick English, done. I'm just pressing enter. Choose the Ubuntu server, yeah, that's fine, done. Just let it get its own IP address. I'm not too concerned with setting a static address right now. So as long as it gets one, you're okay. Press done. No proxy, press done. Let this finish. This is just confirming that it's able to get to the Ubuntu repositories. And it says as long as this mirror location passed tests, you're okay. Press done. Use the entire disk, yep, and just head down all the way to done. Here it's a little important. If you scroll up with your arrow keys, you should see that you have this LVM volume group, and then underneath it this is mounted at /, which means the root. You need to press enter on that because you're not using all the space. So you see you may have the same name as me, so it's Ubuntu LV. You can see on the left it says max 76 point something. Yours will be different, right? Mine is only using half, so I'm just gonna put 76 there, so that way I'm using all the available space. And press save, and then just head down to done. And are you sure you're wiping the disk? Yes, continue. And just put any name here. I'll call this Portainer. Oh, this is my name. Anaya. Server name Portainer. Username Anaya. And then a password that you'll remember. And done. All right. Ubuntu Pro is like more security, but I think you have to pay for it. So just no, continue. I'm gonna choose to install OpenSSH. I'm pressing the space key to check it off, and that's just so I can get to it from a terminal. And we're not gonna install any of this, not right now, because we're gonna do it manually. And go to done, and basically just let this installation run, and it should let you know when it's finished. Alright, so once it's done, you should see installation complete here at the top, and you just have to use your arrow keys and go down to the bottom where it says reboot now. Press enter on that. You may get this text that says that it failed to unmount the CD, and it says please remove the installation, or the disk, right, the ISO file. So if we head over to hardware and we look at the CD drive here, it's a virtual CD drive, right? Let's go to edit, and then we're just going to put do not use any media. So this is as if we're like popping out the disk, so to speak. So we're removing the installation file, and we'll go back to the console and press enter. So this will just cause Ubuntu to reboot, and hopefully everything went well, and you should get to the Ubuntu login screen. You'll see just a bunch of text flying across the screen. Now the next step here is we're going to actually set up follow the instructions for Docker. That's sort of like the underlying engine that is going to run Portainer on top of it. Yeah, so here's the login, and again the name there is just what I call the server, right? So the username is whatever you put, your password there, and let's run. We can basically just click this paper thing over here on the right. It's going to copy all this stuff. What it's doing is running updates, installing some certificates, installing some keys, downloading Docker, and modifying the key for Docker so that it's allowed, and then adding this repository to Ubuntu so that it can pull future Docker updates. So you can just paste all that. Oh, if it lets you, it might not let you. That's true. So if it doesn't let you, that's also why we set up SSH before. So if you look, you should see here at the top the IP address of that machine. So if you have a Mac, you can just open up terminal. If you have a Windows, I think you have to, I don't know if SSH is enabled. You might have to download something like PuTTY or Mobile Xterm. Yeah, I like this program. It has a lot of options. This is a SSH and like RDP and FTP and so many different network protocols that you can communicate with. There you can see all of them. So you might have to download this click SSH and connect to it that way. But on a Mac, you can just open up a terminal here. I'm gonna make this bigger. And this is so you can like copy paste stuff. It's easier to work on a terminal. We're just gonna type SSH and then the username, the @ symbol, and then the IP address of the server. So mine is 192.168.100.244. And it's just gonna say, do you know what you're connecting to? Yes, I know. And then your password that you set for your username, and there you go. Next, we're gonna paste all that. So this is just a straight copy paste from the Docker instructions page. And again, it's asking for your password, and it'll just run through all those commands. And that was actually pretty quick. Okay. Curl's already installed. Yep, okay. So that's just adding the repository, and now we're actually going to install Docker. So that's this command. And do you want to continue? Y for yes. And actually, since we're in SSH, we don't need this anymore. So we can just press exit over here, and I don't think we need to come back here, but we may, so I'll just leave it there. Once that's done, then the next step is to just verify that Docker works, and running this simple hello world image, and it's just going to print hello world to the screen. So sudo docker run hello world, and it's going to download that image, and then it's just going to say hello from Docker. So everything's working fine, so we're good. Next is Portainer here. So we do have Docker installed now, so now we can move on, and yeah, we're going to copy this first one, creating a volume for Portainer to store its data. Oh, yeah, we need to run this with sudo. So at the beginning, you have to type the text sudo space and then that command. So there we go. And then again, copy this one. This is going to download and install the Portainer container. So sudo paste. So there it is, pulling this. This means it's downloading all these different images and then basically installing and running all of these images all at once. And that's it. So that's how simple it is to deploy something in Docker. You can verify that stuff is running if you do a sudo docker and then ps command, and that will show you any containers that you may have running in Docker. So you see here, I have this container, that's the name, or that's the ID. This is the name, Portainer Community Edition long-term service branch, created 15 seconds ago. It's been up for 12 seconds. It's cut off a little bit on my screen here, but this is ports. So IP address is 00000, port 8000. So that's an internal port transferring to an outside port. So it's port 8000 and then 9443 as well. So that means that in order to get to the login page for Portainer, we have to type the IP address of our Ubuntu machine and then port 8000, I think. It might be not 9443. 9443. And it has to be HTTPS. So HTTPS : there we go. So HTTPS : your Ubuntu IP address : your or the port 9443. And go to advanced, continue. And this is the first installation page, so we can set our own username and our own password here. Something you'll remember, of course, and create. So here we have Portainer ready to go. Hopefully everything's gone well up until this point. If not, you may have to rewind, go back a little bit, but once we're here, we're going to continue with installing RomM. All right, so now we have Proxmox ready to go. We have Portainer installed, hopefully, anyway. And we want to actually install something in Portainer. But before we do that, I just wanted to point out some minor things you may want to take care of. So, for example, if you go to your Proxmox Portainer VM and you go to the summary, you'll see that you should see a lot of information here. And you do get some of it, but for example, the IP, it says guest agent not running. So if you encounter that issue, what it is that in order for the virtual computer to communicate with the hypervisor, which is Proxmox, there needs to be some sort of middleman, and that's usually in the form of some software. So if you go to options, this QEMU guest agent, you'll see this term come up in various different hypervisors like VMware and Proxmox and Red Hat and all that stuff. But the guest agent is that middleman software that allows your virtual computer to communicate with the external hypervisor. So all we really need to do is install it. So I just searched Proxmox guest agent and this came up, and basically it's just installing it. So if you have like a GUI, a graphical interface, you can like insert a virtual disk, an ISO, and for example in Windows, and install it like that. But if you have just a terminal, just a command line, then they do give you some commands here for Linux on what you have to run in order to install it. So apt-get install QEMU guest agent, and this is for Debian or Ubuntu based systems. If you have some other system like Red Hat, the command changes from instead of apt-get to yum or yum, and then you may have to start it and enable it. But so we can just run these commands really quickly. So sudo apt-get install QEMU guest agent. Now put the -y just to say yes ahead of time, and your password. So it doesn't install it by default, so you just have to run this and install it. And then we can check sudo system control systemctl status, and then QEMU guest agent. I just pushed the tab key. I typed QEMU and then tab, and it filled it out for me. So we can see that it is inactive, so we have to start it. So sudo systemctl start QEMU guest agent, and then we check the status again, and now we see that it's active running. So hopefully that fixes this problem here. Yeah, there we go. So now we can see our IP address and more information. So we get more connectivity from the hypervisor to the actual virtual machine. So this is just a one-time thing that you'd have to do on every virtual machine that you configure. But once it's done, it should stay. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then another thing you may want to do is, if you intend on having this sort of automated, like you don't want to worry about it, and if this Proxmox ever needs to restart or something, here's another option, start at boot. Just want to enable that, so that when the Proxmox, if Proxmox ever needs to restart or something, your virtual machine will also turn back on instead of you having to manually turn it back on. And then one last thing is, if we go here to update, you'll see the Proxmox node itself, not data center, but the node right below it. And we head down to updates repositories. We'll see that it says the enterprise repository is enabled, but there's no subscription. So technically speaking, the Proxmox system is paid, but there is a community version, just like we installed Portainer Community Edition. There's a community edition of Proxmox. So normally you would not deploy the community edition on a production environment, like for an actual business. You would just have them buy a license. But if you're going to be doing this at home, then you can change these repositories to the community version. So if we go just here and do Proxmox community repo, I think it's probably this one here. Yeah, so we can change the repositories here that we want to use the non-paid version, which one's this one's enterprise. Here we go, no subscription. So we don't have a subscription, so we just want to change these to be this PVE no subscription here. So this file apt sources.list, we want to change that. So let's head over here. Let's go to the shell here in Proxmox shell, and then we're just going to run nano etc apt sources.list and press enter. So you'll see here are our repositories, the regular ones that require subscription. So we do want to copy these. Actually, instead of doing it here, because I can't copy paste, I'm gonna exit out of that. Actually, can I copy paste? Let's see. Copy paste. Oh yeah, I can here. Yeah. So if you can't copy paste, you'll have to manually type it, but hopefully you don't have to do that. So nano, okay. So we just make sure the one thing you have to note is the version of Proxmox that you're running. So for example, we're running version 8 as of this video anyway, and that is referred to as bookworm. So whenever you replace a repo, if you're doing this in the future, if you have an older version of Proxmox or something, the name there might be different. So make sure that the names match. You don't want to put the wrong repository. So for no subscription, we're going to leave the bookworm main contrib, bookworm updates main contrib. So I think those are the first two. Yep. And then for this here, you don't have to copy these with the pound symbol or the number sign. Those are referred to as comments. So you can if you want for your own sake, but you don't necessarily have to. So we're going to copy this one here, which is the main no subscription repository. And I'm just going to put it right there. And then the security updates, we need to change that one to this bookworm security main contrib. Oh, actually, that one looks the same, right? The security, Debian security, bookworm security. Oh, it's not the same, I think. So I'm going to put a pound symbol on that one and paste theirs. Yeah, you can see it's a little different. So I'm assuming it's different. And I think that's it. So let's press Control X, Y for yes. So now our, you may have to restart Proxmox for this to take effect. Oh, there we go. Never mind. So it did take effect. So now it says the enterprise is enabled. Oh, we do need to disable that one. Enterprise, let's just click disable. And I think that's it, right? Oh, this one too. Enterprise, anything that says enterprise over here, and disable. So yeah, so now we have the no subscription repo is not recommended for production use. I mean, that's okay. We're not production. And you get updates now. So Proxmox should update itself on a regular basis. And it doesn't really ever require a reboot, but it may, just so you're aware. And it will always show this warning because technically this repo is not safe, so to speak, but it's fine. I've never had an issue with it. All right, so now we have Portainer and we actually want to put something on it. So I figured why not put something fun? So RomM is this free web-based emulator system that I found where you can actually play retro games on your browser. So it can't play everything, but it can play a lot of systems. So we're going to install this, and it's not as hard as you think, though if you don't know what you're doing, and maybe it's a little hard. But if we head over to install now, they just take you to the documentation page, which of course is daunting already. But to get started with RomM, head over to the quick start guide, which is where we'll go. And they do ask you to have these things installed. So Docker and Docker Compose, which we have Docker and we opted for Portainer instead, but you don't have to use Portainer. I never really explained what Portainer is, but it's just a container management system. So if you have a lot of containers, you use something like Portainer to manage all those containers. And a container is sort of a similar idea to a virtual machine where you have your hardware at the bottom and you have a virtual computer above it that's just using some of that hardware. A container is somewhat the same idea where you have your hardware and then you put the container above it and it's just allocating some of those resources to the container. It's just the way that it accomplishes that is slightly different in that a container can share a single operating system's kernel, so that the amount of resources, technically speaking anyway, compared to a virtual machine is less. So a container uses less resources than a virtual machine. So just to illustrate, for example, a virtual machine, you have to have CPU, memory, a hard drive, a drive of some sort, and you have to install an operating system. When you install that operating system, it's going to take up some of that space. So for example, here, my operating system, where's it at? Hardware, hard disks. How do I see how much size I'm using? It's using barely anything, I think. Yeah, but it uses up some space. That's kind of the point. The operating system itself will use up some storage versus a container that it kind of shares that operating system. It shares the kernel, so you're saving resources. It's a way to just save resources to better use what you have instead of like reinstalling the operating system for every virtual machine. So if you have, for example, 10 different containers, if they were virtual machines, you'd have to put 10 different virtual machines, each with its own operating system. If you're using Ubuntu, you're installing Ubuntu 10 times, which is kind of a waste of space, because why not just use one Ubuntu? So pros and cons, it's not like it's superior in every way. There's benefits to doing either one, and containers themselves are still a little glitchy, but if you get them to work, they work pretty well, and they are resource conserving. So just have Docker and Docker Compose installed. You don't need a Twitch account, that's optional. You don't need Screen Scraper. That's just for getting all these images here, like the cover art and all that stuff. So if you wanted to set these up, you can. We're not going to do that. And then your ROMs, I'm not going to show you where to get these. Obviously, it's not entirely legal, but I do have one. So I'm going to just show you how to put that in there. And then we just need to actually build it. So there's a download a copy of the latest Docker Compose YML or YAML file from GitHub. So if you click that, it takes you over to here. And so this is what's called a Docker Compose file, which is just sort of the script, the instructions to tell Docker what you want to do. So just briefly, I'm not going to go into this in super detail because this could be an entire class, but you're allocating some storage, so volumes. You have 3 different storage here, one for database, one for resources, and one for Redis, which is a caching system. Just speed things up, basically. Then you're creating some services that you want to run. One is going to be RomM itself, which then it's all sort of by spacing. So you notice how it's indented in. So that means that this portion here all belongs to this main service because it's all indented in the same line. So RomM, it requires an image. The image name is here. It's pulling from this repository, RomM app, and then getting the latest version of RomM. The container name is going to be just RomM. This name is just a name. You can call it whatever you want. It will restart every time. So if there's some issue with it, if there's a problem with it, it's going to restart every time. The environment here, this is the key part. You're telling it what the information that it needs to run. So the database host is the name of another service. The database name is just the name of the database. So you can change this. Database user, database password, or authentication secret key, a client ID, and so on, right? So these here are optional, and these are just for grabbing, again, the cover art here from various different services. Next, we specify the volume, so the storage that this main container is going to use. And so we're telling it for resources, use this directory. For Redis, the cache, use this directory. And so for our library, use this directory. And for our assets and config, use these directories. So these are a couple things we'll have to specify ourselves, where we have to give it a library, assets, and config. And then ports, we're saying use an internal to external port. So what port are we going to use? Or is it external or internal? One of those. So we have to open up a port on this machine to allow that web interface, right? And then it depends on, meaning that in order for this main container or this main service to run, it does require this other service to be running in a condition that's healthy. And if it's restarted, then this one also restarts, I think. And then a second service is the database, pulling an image of MariaDB, which is a database program. Stop doing that. All right. And then the container name is RomDB, restart every time. The environment is a password, a database, a user, and that's the root password account, and then the user password account. And volume, just MySQL data, and then health checks here. So it's just checking to make sure the database is healthy. These are just some periodic checks, right? It starts after 30 seconds. It checks every 10 seconds. and gives it a 5-second timeout, retries 5 times, and is checking for this here, which is a health check script. And basically, is the database healthy or not? Is it running or not? And if it's not, then either restart or just shut it down. So we're gonna copy this. All right, so this copy raw file here, and we're gonna head over to Portainer, and we're gonna go to this local environment here. Just click that. We're gonna go to templates, I believe, custom. Yeah, and we're gonna add a custom template. So you can call this whatever you want. RomM example maybe. Platform Linux standalone. Yeah, and then we're gonna paste our Docker Compose file here. You can't just run this. We have to edit a couple things, but let's follow their guide here. So number 2, edit the file and modify the following values to configure the database: a MariaDB root password, a MariaDB database, which is the name, the MariaDB user, which is just a username, and MariaDB password, which is the password for this user. So let's do those here. So this, where is it at? Yeah, here, MariaDB root password. So feel free to type whatever you want. What I like to do is go to just Google or search engine and search for password generator, and any of them will work really. And to keep it compatible, you want to just check off symbols, so that sometimes when you're writing scripts, if you include, for example, like a quote, that can mess things up. So just keep it to numbers and letters, and just make it long. So here's a long string of numbers and letters. So I'm just going to go back to Portainer and paste that in. Make sure you put a space, because you want this to be a comment, not otherwise it would be included as part of your password. The database and the username, you don't have to change it, so we won't. And then I'm just going to generate another password here and paste that as my MariaDB password. Careful with that space too. Okay, so that's number 2 there. Number 3 is modify the following values in the environment to configure the application. Other values can be changed, but should not be done unless you know what you are doing. So db name, db user, db password in the environment. All right. So I believe it was here. Yeah, db host, db name, db user, which we left alone. And db password is the second one, not the root password, but the user password. So there it is. Okay. And whoops, where am I? Okay, and then run the following command in a terminal and save the output to the RomM auth secret key environment. So you can copy this and run it in your same virtual machine that you're connected to, hopefully still. And all it does is it runs this OpenSSL command, a random hexadecimal string of 32 characters. So it's just a way to generate a random string of hexadecimals for the sake of having this authentication secret key, which is for security purposes. And then number 5 is modify the following values in the volumes to configure the application. So some path to your library, to your assets, and to your config. So, all right, so for the library and assets, which is if you're gonna store your saves and all that stuff, the ideal way to do this is if you have some NAS, network storage of some kind, and then you write the path to some external library here. But you may not have that, which is fine. So just for the sake of getting it up and running, but again, not a great long-term solution, but just for now, we can just create another volume. Let's call it like RomM data, and use that as our storage, and it'll just store it with the container itself within Portainer. So we added just RomM data here, and then we're just going to add a new volume up here as well. Make sure you follow their syntax. So RomM -data : and then replace all those path to library with RomM -data. So that's it. That's all you should need. just head to the bottom and hit update down here and save it. And then we're just going to head over to our application, or custom here again, sorry. And then we're going to click our template, and this will let us deploy it. So let's just call this a test for now. And you can enable access control here, just leave it so that only administrators, if you have multiple users, can modify this container. But we're just going to hit deploy stack. So depending on the computer you're using, this may take a minute or two, but once it's up and running, if you remember from before, we did specify this portion here, which means that it is I believe an internal port of 8080, which means this is the port on the container itself. And then it's exposing to the outside, which means it's exposing to the virtual machine, to the virtual machine's IP, the port 80. So that means in order to get to our RomM web interface, looks like it's running, we're just going to have to go to the IP address of the host machine itself and go to port 80, which is just a regular HTTP port. So if we go to, once it's ready, it should take you over to the stacks menu. But if it's not, just click stacks over here. You should see your test stack, and hopefully everything is green here. Your two containers, RomM and RomMDB, running and healthy. So you can't just click this because it'll get confused. But basically, just go to your IP address, different than mine, right? And then just port 80. So hopefully everything is good. That means you have RomM up and running. You're just going to configure a username and password here for the first time. And we did not configure any of these scrapers. All you have to do really is sign up to these, and they have instruction on how to do that. And once you create an account, some of them are free, some of them are not, but if you create an account on the free ones, you just go to their settings page and they let you generate an API key, and that's what you put in to here, which is right here. So a client ID, client secret, Moby Games API, Steam Grid DB API. So if you have these accounts, you can just get these from the account settings pages. Yeah, so we don't have any of these, so that's fine. We're just going to hit finish. And not now, and then I'm just going to log in. So that's RomM up and running. We don't have anything in here, right? So we're just going to go to upload. And if you notice that I did have a file that I got from somewhere that I'm not going to say where. And make sure that you choose what console it's for. So this is a GBA, so Game Boy Advance file. I'm going to hit upload here. And it's going to hopefully get the scan done. Yep, here we go. So there's our new file. It adds the platform once we've actually uploaded it, and it scans it and all that stuff. And so I'm going to go into my Game Boy. There's my Metal Slug Advance. And you can hit play here, and it will just let you basically play it on the browser, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna get out of that. So the controls are down here. Yep. And so it kind of tells you what it maps it to, so the arrow keys and so on and so on. So yeah, see, it works just like an actual emulator. So if you want to, just use this for your home use, you can. Of course, there's more you can do. Like you can use DNS and Cloudflare and all this cool stuff to deploy this on the internet, so you could access this from anywhere. So plenty more to learn, but hopefully you got everything working. If not, go back through my guide, or I can just help you out as much as I can. But let me know if you have questions on anything, and I'll do my best to answer. But if not, then take care.